Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mad Love Your Life show. Excited to have you all here today. I'm trying a slightly new setup. We'll see how it feels. And without further ado, I want to get us rocking and rolling. I've had a fabulous week. I spent the weekend in beautiful Sedona, Arizona, getting my rock climbing, hiking, meditation on. And it was really, really beautiful. And I'm just so reminded of how wonderful it is to have the refresh and also just how beautiful the West is right now, because you've got all the rain showers that have been happening this year, and flowers are in full bloom. Everything is green, and it's a really, really beautiful time to be outside. So if you're not getting your daily dose of vitamin D, you have no excuse this year. It is beautiful and magnificent outside, and I hope that you all are finding beautiful weather and sunshine wherever you are. Obviously, we're coming off of the eclipse. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. And I also want to remind you that at any point during the live show, you can call in your questions. You can dial into 1-866-451-1451. Or if you're streaming live from the YouTube channel, you can drop your questions for us down in the chat, and the studio engineers will pass your questions over us for answers. Today, I am really excited because this guest is going to knock your socks off, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be beautiful. So today's show features Dr.Jae Kim, and he's a highly, highly skilled facial plastic surgeon. He's got a passion for enhancing natural beauty and restoring confidence. His journey began in New York City, where he completed his undergraduate studies at Harvard, majoring in chemistry. Then he pursued his medical education at the University at Buffalo Jacobs School of Medicine, followed by a residency in head and neck surgery. Dr. Kim further honed his expertise through a facial plastic surgery fellowship in Richmond, where he provided compassionate care to a diverse range of patients, including cosmetic patients, facial trauma victims, and veterans. And during his residency, he was recognized for his commitment to patient-centered care and was inducted into the Gold Humanism Honor Society. He believes in the power of listening to patients and strives to achieve their aesthetic goals while preserving their unique natural beauty. And in addition to his clinical practice, Dr. Kim is dedicated to teaching and mentoring the next generation of facial plastic surgeons. He has served as a faculty member at Virginia Commonwealth University and Case Western University, inspiring residents to excel in their field. He is also involved in the Face-to-Face program, where he provides pro bono care to survivors of domestic abuse. And outside of medicine, Dr. Kim is a talented amateur violinist with a lifelong passion for music. He has performed in prestigious venues worldwide, including the Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall. Dr. Kim draws parallels between the precision and artistry of classical music and facial plastic surgery, emphasizing the importance of dedication and continuous improvement in both disciplines. He is also a double board certified physician by the American Board of, I'm not going to say it right, but it's head and neck surgery. I'll have Dr. Kim tell us how to actually pronounce that word. I think it's otolaryngology or something like that. And also the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. His unwavering commitment to excellence and compassionate patient care really, really sets him apart as a leader in his field. And to learn more about him, visit the show notes. You can also visit his LinkedIn profile, which is linkedin.com/in/Alex Kim. And with that, Dr. Kim, welcome to the show. It's so beautiful to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. Wow, what an introduction. I really appreciate it.
You got it. Well, you have a beautiful list of accolades. And I love that. I love that. I love that you have these really beautiful like on paper accomplishments, but more than that, I love that you are someone who your patients and the people that work with you also give you big accolades, because I think those are even more important once we get past the hard work for all the little digits that we go through our education system on to get in our work world. But you were introduced to me by one of my longest and dearest friends, who
Mhm.
actually is a nurse that gets to work with you. So for those of you that don't know, I've told the story about Jennifer. She is literally one of my oldest friends. We have known each other since we were virgins. Matter of fact, we were like, I think, 9 or 10 years old when we first met. We were in elementary school, and she has gone on to shares your passion of violin. She played in school,
Yep.
and has gone on to be she was a nurse. At the hospital for a long time, and then, of course, has switched over and found the beautiful world of aesthetics, and is an injector there, and she does beautiful work, and now gets to work out there with you in the DC area. And I am just really excited because I know that you have such a great message. If any of you have gone to or will go to Dr. Kim's site, you will see he's got some really great messaging. He also has a show. You'll see he's on video and he's talking to you about beauty, and really, what it means to live that way on the inside out, and that beauty, everyone has their own definition of it. And I think that's really important, and that's a really important message. And so, as we go through this conversation, first I have to ask you the most important question of the week, which is, what part of the eclipse is affecting you right now?
That's a good one. The so it was on Monday, right? A couple days
Yeah.
ago, and I didn't get around to getting the appropriate glasses,
Mm,
so I actually didn't look at it, which is probably the best for your eye health.
yes.
I did see though, like, just looking out the window from where we were working, that there was definitely some amount of, a little bit of darkness over, the
Mm,
landscape. So I did appreciate that. Um, I guess it won't happen for a while longer, but it's funny. My brother sent me a picture of his little ones just staring into the sky with those little things over their eyes, and it's
yes.
really, really cute. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I know I was actually at the airport, so I was flying from Arizona back to Texas, and my dad picked me up, and he had a pocket full of like 5 sets of glasses because he meant to catch it, but unfortunately they were. My mom has been in the hospital this week. They're taking care of her
Oh,
pacemaker, and so they were literally wheeling her out as it was all happening. So he missed it completely. So everybody missed it. He got glasses for everyone, but everyone missed it. So they didn't get a chance to see it. But yeah, I just thought
yeah.
it was interesting because I joke about the eclipse. I wasn't actually that like involved or in the hype of seeing it. So cool. I love phenomenon. That's great. But I was
Mhm.
definitely had other fish to fry that day. What I
Yeah.
will say is I was joking with everyone because I said, whatever problems you're having this week, blame it all on the eclipse. But next week you have to come and take full ownership for whatever else is going on in your life, because the eclipse won't be here.
Yeah.
But for those of you that love the woo and also love the science, so in just a few more days, as we enter between April 13th and May 5th, there is actually a huge meteor shower. And so it will happen every single night. Yes, every single night, but the
Wow.
height of it will be on May 4th and May 5th. And so you want to get somewhere where there's no light pollution. If you can, don't look at your phones. Let your eyes adjust to the darkness. And the darker it is, the more you're going to see those meteor showers. And again, it's another great phenomenon that we're having a lot of those this year. So you got your eclipse.
Wow.
Now you get to go and enjoy a beautiful nighttime shower of stars. So hopefully those of you that can catch that will enjoy it. So, Dr. Kim, one of the questions that I love to ask people on the show is, tell me what you know now that you wish you had known before you got started. So, before you ever got into any kind of plastic surgery, any kind of beautification or reconstruction, talk to me like what is it that you wish you had known all those years ago that you know now?
One of the things that I really find intriguing these days is that in order to get where I am, you have to study a lot. And it might be the understatement of the year. but you have to study a lot. Of course, you have to retain all that knowledge. You have to do well on tests. You have to achieve a certain standard of excellence to get to where you are. The thing is, once you're there, nobody tells you, oh, by the way, you also have to be a good people person. And so, there are a lot of smart people who are not the best people, you
Mm,
know? And so, for me on a day-to-day basis, what's more on my mind than I ever thought it would be is how to interact with people.
mm,
That starts with my notion of self, how I'm feeling about myself today, who I am as a person, as a physician, in all the hats I wear. The other ways of thinking about this also is related to the people you work with, right?
mhm.
And so you want to do well by them, you know, you have to have a team that's going to help you, take care of the work that you have to do, which is taking care of our patients. And so the third aspect of this is, how am I, um, meeting my patients as a human being, and more
Mm,
than as a doctor or somebody who wants to take care of your beauty, which are all important, but how am I meeting you as a person? And so that connection has to be there in order for any kind of fruitful relationship to occur. And as you know, business is about relationships, right? More than it is about transactions, it's about relationships. And
yeah.
so I'm way more focused on making sure that, hey, my staff and I, we are a good unit. And, whoever walks through our door, from young to old, no matter what stage of life you're in, that we meet you where you are. So, yeah, much more than anything that, um, younger me would have known. And it seems kind of obvious now, but it's about the relationship that you have with your patient.
Absolutely. I obviously, a lot of the listeners know I have been through breast cancer over about 7 years ago. And it's interesting because one of the conversations that I often have with other survivors or other people who are going through the system, and we're going through a lot of the conversation around that first time that we were told a diagnosis, and how sometimes the
Yeah,
bedside manner, boy, it is rough and it needs a lot of work. And even just being in the hospital with my mom in and out this last year, even then, just the bedside manner is, whew, it is definitely could use a little care. And I think, I from a compassionate lens, like I want to understand, like I imagine also how difficult it is to be a doctor who is delivering information, especially if it's constantly information that's hard to give to people, right? It's life changing information, very emotionally charged information you can be giving someone. And at the same time, how do you deliver it like it's the first time to someone that you really care about 10 times a day or however many times a day it's going to happen? And I think it also calls for one of those things where you're right. I think in school, there's, unless there's a whole semester on relationships and empathy, then there's probably a lot lacking there. You can bring someone in that's very smart and very good at what they do, but it doesn't always mean they're going to deliver it with finesse and kindness or in a way that people can really receive it and take it in. And I have to agree with you, because I will say that of all the doctors that I had, my plastic surgeon, she actually is following in suit with you. She did my breast reconstruction, and she was by far the best relationship builder. I felt like I was talking to a friend when she was telling me
mm,
my options. And she was also just candid with me, but still like positive and still encouraging in the
mm,
delivery of it. And you're right, we are all in the business of relationships no matter what we do. So I
that's
think that
right.
that's a beautiful focus, and it clearly shows through by the way you treat people and the way that they speak about you. And so with the what you've learned, one of the other things I would love to venture in is, like, did you have any particular mentor or person who helped you along the way?
So, in terms of my surgical training, as you said, I did my residency in Buffalo, New York, and the chairman of our residency department, his name's Dave Sherris, and he still practices to this day. He, he's a magician as a surgeon, which is really, really cool to see. And, from the first time I saw him at the beginning of residency until the last time I watched him operate and helped him out, it's part of the learning process that he guides you through as a great surgeon, but also like, you know, gauging where I was in terms of my surgical, learning process. So in terms of just the day to day, my first year, obviously, I don't get to do much. I mostly get to watch, right? But by the time I'm finishing my fifth year, there's more that he's allowing me to do. And that kind of incremental learning process that there is some amount of autonomy that you have to gain. At the same time, there are guardrails. Like when you go bowling, right?
Right.
And he knew how to adjust those subtly, but I kind of knew, that he's letting me participate more and learn more hands-on. So that was a very big incentive to say, hey, I want to not just excel in surgery, but I want to help other people learn as well. You know, some summers, like we have, college students on their break who want to shadow a doctor. And so I say, sure, come along, and, they'll kind of be a fly on the wall, so to speak. They'll watch me do surgery sometimes or interact with patients. And, I think, in terms of my growth as a physician, as a surgeon, a lot of it I owed to Dave Sherris.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right. Well, with that, I have so many more questions for you today. I am so excited to talk to you about some juicy stories also, because I'm sure that you have a couple of those to share with us. That'll be fun little quips. But before we do that, we are going to hop to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Excellent. Welcome back, everyone. So, Dr. Kim, before we stopped for the break, we were talking a little bit about the mentors and one particular mentor that you had in your life, and how he impacted you with the work that you do. And I think that that's such a beautiful leadership lesson of how when we have great mentors in our life, that really that's how we learn. It's how we learn and how we learn to teach others. And it also opens those doors for us to just really explore and be curious and get great at what we do, right? At some point, you had to pick up a scalpel and start cutting. So somewhere along the line, someone had to have the confidence in you, and you had to have the confidence to be able to get in there and do the work. Tell me, why did you go into plastic surgery? What was the motivation? What was attractive about it? I know do you come from a normal, traditional Asian family where we have to be doctors or lawyers, like, like, did you follow suit, or were you just really inspired? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So medical school wise, I'm the first in my immediate family to be a doctor. And, part of it, I don't know if, I don't think, yeah, I can't recall a specific moment where my mom and dad were like, you have to be a doctor. And, and, and at the end of the day, you have to want to do this, because it's that grueling for anybody who is thinking about med school or healthcare, the profession. But I think in terms of, you know, pursuing the field of plastic surgery, and in particular facial plastic surgery, I started out in med school and we all have an anatomy class. And so when it comes to the anatomy class, you learn about all of the structures of the human body. And they divided it into three modules. And the last one they dedicate to the head and neck because everybody says it's the hardest one. For me, it was the easiest. So it came naturally in terms
Mm.
of, all the nerves, the structures, the muscles, the bones, everything like that. It just came naturally. And that was actually the best score out of the three tests that I scored on the gross anatomy course, which it wasn't for a lot of people. So that's what got me interested in head and neck anatomy, and in particular head and neck surgery. So as I go along further in training, you think about what makes us human, what makes us individuals. And I would say the two areas of our body that make us the most human, the most individuals, are our face and maybe our hands.
Mm.
And so for me, the idea of impacting the way people see you, the way people perceive you, the way you
Mm.
present yourself to the world, that's the most powerful way to impact someone. And so that's why I love what I do as a facial plastic surgeon.
Love that. I think a lot of times when people hear plastic surgeon in general, we think of beautification. We think of a nip and a tuck. We think about getting rid of some wrinkles. And it really changed my bias around that when I had to go in and have a reconstruction, because I was also
Mm,
recognizing that there's so much reconstructive work that is kind of like, I don't know, the God's work of, plastic surgery when I think about it, because, when a person has been maimed by an accident, or they leave a debilitating disease and they've lost parts, or they need to have, for me, for sure, it was a breast reconstruction. That was an undertaking, to be able to say, okay, great, you're taking out all of my breast tissue, and now, what am I left with? Like pockets. But to
right.
have a plastic surgeon come in and like skillfully, sew inside sutures, and then wrap the implant in a in its little kind of wrapping, and then putting it into the body and making sure that it doesn't end up in my back. Like, there's all these like nuances of what can go wrong, right,
Mhm.
with that. And I just go, oh, it is such a skill to be able to make something look as close as you can to the original, especially for someone who has undergoing a trauma of losing a part, or I can imagine like a burn patient and like the reconstruction that might happen there. So I would love to hear from you, because I see that you do work with veterans, that you obviously have done stuff with trauma patients. And now I imagine that, do you do more of your work now with aesthetics in terms of helping people, tighten up wrinkles and things like that? Or do you still, are you still enjoying the work of also reconstructions and things like that?
Yeah, so the reconstructive, I would say, is not as big a part of my practice anymore. But the principles that I learned doing that always apply to, aesthetic or cosmetic surgery, if you will.
Mm.
So, when it comes to, um, let's say somebody, like a patient of mine, maybe about a year ago, fell down the stairs and broke her cheekbone. And so, yeah, it's tough because, like, the cheeks are kind of what set the beauty right here, right? And
Yeah,
so when that's different one side to the other, it makes you, whenever you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, there's kind of a sense of loss, if you will. And I know you
absolutely.
can identify, yeah, and I know you can
Yeah.
identify with that.
Yes.
After your ordeal with breast cancer, there's, it can be related to injury, so it can be quite quick, or it can be, related to the aging process where it's gradual. But eventually you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, that's a me that I didn't realize before. And so, they're similar. And so the principles going in, when it comes to, bringing out a more beautiful you, that's those principles are kind of similar. Yeah, the thing that I notice is that, especially whether it's due to injury or whether it's due to just the aging process, um, sometimes a lot of people forget that they were beautiful, that they were born beautiful, right?
Mm,
And so, there's a sense of, oh, if only I could turn back the clock.
mm,
And thankfully, to a large degree, we can, you know, but there is a sense of like, hey, I can't dwell on the beauty of the past that I can not, that I don't necessarily have the ability to gain back 100%, right?
right.
Because 20-year-old, 25-year-old beautiful you is going to be different than 40 or 50-year-old beautiful you. And
Right.
so the ability to embrace that in your mind, because the undeniable truth, regardless of your age, is that you're beautiful, right? And so to help bring that back, it's not just the operation, or it's not just, whatever treatment we do for you.
Hmm.
It's the process of getting from point A to point B. Yes, the treatment is part of it, but it's also like embracing that the beauty that you do have, and you want to continue to achieve the most beautiful version of yourself, and even if that's a little different than the beauty that you had maybe 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Now, I would love to know, what is, I imagine that the work you do is also some mindset work, right? Because if someone comes in and they say, hey, look, I just don't love my face, that's a lot to tackle, because then what does that mean? Like, what does a beautiful face look like to that person, or what are they not perceiving or perceiving it to be? So I'm curious to know, like, as you talk to a potential patient who's coming to you and saying, hey, like, I know I want to change some things, how do you get down to it? Like, how do you get down to helping that person define what beauty is to them? What does that look like?
Mm, yeah. So some of the things that I do or say when I first meet a new patient is, well, a lot of the time I meet them in our dedicated photo room at the office, and I'll say, you know, a lot of people, we say, how can I help you? But I like to say sometimes that, how can I help your beauty? And that question implies that they already have beauty, which they may not have thought before. So that's
Mm.
one way that I lead with the conversation. And I try not to make it sound sleazy, because I guess it could. So I say it in a respectful tone, you
Sure,
know.
sure. Could sound like a pickup line.
Right.
Might come out sounding like booty instead of beauty. I don't know.
Yes. So that's why I actually say BUT, instead of the D sound, I say a T sound, like
Very
proper.
good. Very good. I love that.
Then as
And go ahead.
then as we delve deeper into the conversation, sometimes I'll ask the patient, "Hey, can you tell me about a feature of your face that you do like?" And so that'll give me a sense of, oh, do they not like anything at all?
Mm,
Or is there some aspect, is there some, at least some foundation of beauty where, from which we can build, you know? And the two most common answers I get when I ask that question, oh, are my eyes or my lips? And those
mm,
are kind of the accessories of our face, if you
wow.
will. Like, if you want to wear jewelry, kind of jazzing up our eyes and our lips, right? Because that's where a lot of us, well, not me personally, but a lot of people do makeup, right? To
Sure.
accentuate the beauty of our eyes and the beauty of our lips. So, that kind of, um, those kinds of questions allow me to gauge, hey, what mindset is this person in? Are they going to need more hand holding in terms of building that beauty confidence part of them? And, for me, like, yes, again, kind of like doing certain procedures or giving certain treatments, that's one thing, but like getting them to believe that they're beautiful, that's sometimes the harder part, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that inner work sometimes can be a lot more difficult. And, I feel like I say this from firsthand experience also. I was a kid that grew up in Southern California. And so by the time, I was out of college and into life, I think I was very much a product of my environment, in that I lived in LA, and of all places, I lived in Beverly Hills. And I remember that the pressure, like the pressure to be a certain type of beautiful was what struck me as kind of my bias of just having grown up as a Southern California girl. And I just always felt like not great in my own body. And I remember going to look for a plastic surgeon, and I ended up landing on, and I wish I could remember his name. I imagine he's probably still practicing today. He was a young doctor, but he was actually, I believe, like a hand reconstructive doctor. And I thought, man, to do reconstruction, honestly, on most parts of the body, I think it takes a level of art. Like you have to have some artistry to you and able to like for things to be symmetrical and for the stitches to be right. Like these are all the imaginations I have around what it takes to do the work. And I just remember going in having I had a tummy tuck, and I'd never had children, so there was no pain. They talk about how painful sometimes the surgery can be because people are cutting through muscle, but I had no muscle to cut through because I hadn't had any babies, so there was no muscle. It was literally like they made an incision, like the outline of a football, and then they took it out and sewed me back up. And I remember I healed really fast, and I was like, oh, this is nothing. You could do this in your sleep. But in my mind, I was just so, like, in my mind, I was so fat. But when I asked him, I said, hey, can you show me what you cut? And he was like, oh, you want to see it? I said, yeah. And I remember he brought it out, and it was almost like on this like a cutting board is what it reminded me of. And it was such a small piece of skin. And I remember looking at it thinking, like in my mind, it was going to be like such a massive piece of like flesh, and it just wasn't. And that really I had to sit with that, because afterwards, as I was healing and time went on, and of course I got older, now it's 20 plus years later, and I laugh at that 25-year-old me, because I was like, oh my gosh, like the way I thought about my own body image is so different than how I see myself today. And it's been such an evolution. And that did take mindset. That did take time to look at myself and define for myself, what do I actually think is beautiful? What even success, I tell people all the time, like, you have to define that for yourself. No one else can define that for you. If you let others define it for you, you will be out there looking and grinding and just trying to fit everyone else's version while you leave your own behind. And I think you could say, the same comes to beauty, of like thinking through what is beautiful and just our own perception of ourself, or our own perception of our body. And it is such inner work to do. What
Yeah.
happens when someone who has had lots of plastic surgery comes to your office? And I don't, maybe you haven't had that, but I would think that in the time that you've been around, surely it's happened where you've had someone come in and they are just like, wow, we're starting to look like the cat lady. Like what happens? Like, is there a point where you actually can look at someone and you have to turn them away? I'm so curious about that in your world.
The short answer is yes, absolutely. The thing about pressure, which I think you said, when you sought out the plastic surgeon who did your tummy tuck, the pressure is more real than ever, and it starts from a younger age now, because of social
Yeah.
media, right?
Yes.
And our attention spans are short. We're always looking, through our feed, sometimes hours at a time. You
Mm,
know, I saw this TED talk where they said, whatever spare time you have left outside of the time you sleep, outside of your 9 to 5, um, Gen Z or even younger than that, they will spend upward more than 90% of their free time scrolling social media, which
wow.
is mind-boggling to me,
Mm,
mind-boggling.
yeah.
And the more you get fed everybody else's curated life, that becomes your goalpost, and it continues to move,
Right.
which I think is what you're alluding to,
Totally.
when you let other people define your beauty and your success. So, like you said, and I love this part about your message, is that you have to embrace your own beauty, your own idea of success, and your message is really, really motivating, and
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Um, And so, especially coming from an Asian American, right? Not just that, there are nuances that could be a topic for a whole other time, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there certainly are. So many topics we can cover just for the Asian American community alone. I know it.
Right. But yeah, just that pressure is so real, and it has people coming in after, you know, there's some younger Asian people who come in after having had like 3 or 4 or 5 eyelid surgeries, trying to
Mm,
get that just exact shape. And I have to ask them, well, how is this going to change your life? How is this going to improve your sense of well-being, your confidence, your self-image? And sometimes they have to stop and think pretty hard, because at the end, who are you doing this for? Is it for
right.
somebody else? Is it for the gram? Because
Hmm.
that's not really you either. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, um, yeah, oftentimes, and actually my staff are kind of aware to this too. When they are on the phone or when they're managing inquiries and stuff like that, you can kind of get a sense of, hey, where is this patient at? And is another surgery really going to benefit them? And if there's a big enough reason to say it's not going to help, it's better that they hear the truth.
Mm,
At least from, and sometimes it may be a little hard to hear that, kind of like,
right.
you were mentioning how your reconstructive surgeon, they were candid, but they had good sense of empathy and compassion, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not just going to say no and drop the mic and walk out, obviously. Kind of have to help them through, hey, this is your mindset. This is where I'm at in terms of what I could do for your anatomy given your situation. I don't think it's going to help you. And we as plastic surgeons, a lot of my colleagues and I, we believe that we build our revenue based on the surgeries we do, but we build our reputation on the surgeries that we don't do. And
Mm,
I think that's just as important, if not more important.
I love that. I love that. Well, let's pause on that note. We're going to take another quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
All right, we are back with Dr.Jae Kim, and I just want to share with you all his mantra because I think it is worth mentioning. And you'll see it on his website, you'll see it in the videos that you see him do, and I can't not read it to you because it's fantastic, you guys. And it's that you're beautiful, you're unique, and you're worth it. And his mission is that he's on a mission to make the world a more beautiful place, starting with you. And I love that. That's super inspirational. And before we went to break, we were talking about that this is such a mindset. Beauty is it starts in the mind, right? We all have our own perception of it and our own idea. I like to joke with my chiropractor. I'm like, hey, could you just make me 2 inches taller? Because then I'll be my ideal body weight. And so we have a good laugh about that. And I laugh because I'm like, oh, it's so interesting, right? Like I'm short waisted. Some people are really long waisted. And I imagine that there's people who also show up and they want to look a completely different way that has nothing to do with how they're structured. And that I would imagine poses some problems or some challenges when it comes to just trying to give people a realistic idea of how things are going to what can be done, right? And
Mhm.
in this work, it reminds me, again, going back to my 20-year-old self who had this idea of what I needed to look like. And as the years have gone on, and as I was in the dating world and married and kind of like got out into the world, I went, oh, like this idea that I had about what is beautiful is also not necessarily, it's not true across the board. And it was only through other people showing up in full acceptance of how I already looked, who loved my curves and could speak to that. And as I learned to like dress for my short waistedness, like those kinds of things, like those were the things that actually helped build my confidence and helped me go, oh, wow, like I am really beautiful by my own right in my own way and for the way that I am designed. And I think that that was such a beautiful takeaway because once I got there, there was no looking back after that. Now it's like, I was like, wow, if I had this level of confidence when I was in my 20s, I would have been in a lot more trouble for sure. But 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 I also think that that's time, right? It's time and experience and just the things that we go through, and also what we allow to affect us, and what we allow to influence what we believe is beautiful. And I love how you're talking about. I imagine a lot of people come for the eyelid surgery, especially in the Asian American community, and Asian community. I mean, I have a family full of so many of the kids are half, or a quarter, whether they're quarter Japanese, Thai, you name it. We have we have full house, of the Asian continent in over here in my camp. And I was joking because one of my brother-in-law's sister, she had done the surgery, and I think I was like 5 years old when she'd had it done, to make sure she had an eyelid. She was very much into beauty and her makeup. And one of her kids recently, he's an adult now, and he was posting that he was signing the paperwork to have his eyelids done. And I was like, oh, and so I was like, oh, just like your mom. He goes, yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, okay. And I also think that it's also fantastic that plastic surgery exists because we do have the ability to create some things that may not have existed, or to turn back time just a little bit, depending on what it is. And for those things like reconstruction, I think back on how life changing that was for me, for sure, and just how much I
Mm.
appreciate that work exists in the world, because it was such a weird place to be, where my only reference to anything with my breast would be what, like a breast, like a boob job. And I was like, I remember I'd always been big chested, and I thought to myself, of all the surgeries in the world, this is one I'm never going to have to worry about. Well, fast forward to 40 and breast cancer showing up, like I was like, oh, well, this is not a boob job, but it's a reconstruction that's like
Mhm.
is going to change the way I look, or the way I see myself, and how my clothes fit. And I even remember, like, after surgery, once I was getting into my clothes again, how they fit just a little bit differently. I had to throw out all my
Mm.
old bras because they just didn't quite work like they used to. And it was such an interesting time because it really felt like, oh, I've got some new parts, and I have to learn how to
Right.
work with them and how to, navigate them, and some scars. And I think that's the other piece
Mm.
of it too. And I also know some folks who have gone through surgeries and also have had like trouble with scarring, or they've had surgeries where things don't quite go by. The body doesn't take, some, like, it doesn't take an implant, or it doesn't take whatever, object has come into the body. And I think, in
Mm.
those cases, like that's got to be interesting news to deliver to someone. So can you talk to me a little bit about like what shows up for you when you have to deliver bad news, or when someone is not having the outcome that they were hoping for, and I would love to also speak to maybe like the mind frame of that person, and like, what do you do? What is that next
Mhm.
step, as someone that you are so empathetic? Like, what is a tool that you use, or what is a go-to that you use in your toolbox to come at that person compassionately, and in
Mhm.
delivering news that can be really hard to hear?
Yeah. So I would like to say I've never had a complication with the surgical patient, but if I said that, I wouldn't be operating enough. So every surgeon worth their weight in gold. We have less than desirable outcomes. We'll put it that way.
Right.
The key to managing it actually happens way before surgery ever happens.
Hmm.
And I learned this from an old mentor of mine, is that you need to address the prospect of a possible second surgery before you ever do the first surgery.
Hmm.
And so, whether it's reconstruction, whether it's cosmetic, whether it's something that's potentially life saving, in any arena of surgery, there is that possibility. And I think the most common area where we see people with, oh, I just want maybe a tiny bit more of a tweak. I think it comes in rhinoplasty, actually,
Hmm.
because the nose is at the very center of the middle of our
Of your
face,
face.
right?
Yeah.
And so while people want a beautiful nose, they also want a nose that doesn't stick out and that kind of fits your gestalt, if you will. And so what can happen a lot of times is, after all the healing has happened, which takes longer than you might think, some people think it's like 2 weeks and you have a new nose. It
Right.
actually takes sometimes the final outcome takes 12 to 18 months in
Oof.
terms of the ebb and flow of the swelling. But yeah, even when it comes to that, I always say, the vast majority of times, one surgery and you're done, and you love your result for the rest of your life. But there is a small chance that you may not like a certain part of the outcome.
Hmm.
I do everything in my skill set to make sure that we get the best outcome possible. And you do everything on your part. You don't go playing contact sports after surgery, right? Um, or you don't go chowing down fast food or something like that. Basically, you do your part to make sure that your health is optimized to get the best result possible. But sometimes nature just doesn't agree with what you're trying to do,
Right.
and the outcome is less than desirable. And especially for me as a facial plastic surgeon, like, you see this every day in the mirror.
Hmm.
It's not like another part of your body where you can hide it with clothing.
Right.
Um, and so for that, it's way more top of mind. And so you know, just like you say, you're beautiful, you're unique, you're worth it. It's hard to accept that when you're going through a less than desirable outcome. And the process of that, it's a physical process, but it's also a psychological process where, is there a way to get myself out of this mindset of, hey, this is not a desirable outcome, but I'm going to trust that the people who are with me, guiding me through the beauty journey, are going to be there for me and help me get through to the other side. And so that's where the people part, like we mentioned in towards the beginning, that's super important, And just like I shouted out to my residency mentor, I'll shout out to my fellowship director, who is Dr. Michael Godin down in Richmond. And yes, I learned surgery from him, but it was like more important than learning surgery was learning how to talk to people. And when there's a less than desirable outcome, if you don't have a strong relationship, it's very hard to build that relationship after something undesirable has happened. So you have to have that foundation before you ever wield a knife. And
Hmm.
so that's another reason why I might say no to someone is, if we don't have a foundation of a good relationship, then it's not worth taking that next step, because um, for me and my surgical patients, the relationship is on, the amount of trust that we need to get through a surgery, to get to the other side, is way up higher than for somebody who comes in, for a non-surgical treatment, let's say. Not that those treatments are not important, but just the psychological, mental process of getting through that journey is way more, and sometimes requires a lot more handholding.
Yeah, I can see that. What are some when you think about your, repertoire of clients that you've had over all these years, for people who are thinking about plastic surgery, for people who are thinking about making some shifts, what would you say are some things they can start doing now to start preparing themselves for that? Because I feel like, there's of course the risk of being in surgery no matter what you're going to surgery for, right? That's kind of just, we have to kind of accept that right off the get-go. But when people are really prepping themselves, they're like, oh, maybe I don't love my nose, and they're in the mirror and they're thinking about it. Like, what would you say is a great next step for them? Like, what do you wish your patients knew before they showed up to see you at the office? Like, what's some homework you wish they'd already maybe done before they show up and see you?
Yeah, so I think the initial research process is super important for anybody who is considering plastic surgery, or any change to their beauty. There's so much information online now, and as a plastic surgeon, you kind of have to, you know, put all your stuff online. It's kind of a necessity to be a social media personality, to be, to have a great website and things like that. And so if a certain kind of, let's say a nose is what you're going for, you want to see that surgeon's before and after galleries to say, hey, this person's nose before kind of reminds me of my own. And then, oh, this after result kind of reminds me of, it resembles what I would consider to be a successful change. So the research is super important. I think in terms of preparing yourself physically, surgery, as much as I love to do it, it doesn't fix your skin, right? And so, like, if you think about a car, and I'm a sucker for analogies, this surgery is kind of like the engine work, the transmission work. But skincare, that is the surface work, the waxing, the detail, the car wash, whatever. And so you can do the best surgery in the world, but if you don't have a great canvas of skin to lay on top of that, it's not going to be as great a result. So I think consistent, taking care of your skin with regard to what you apply to your skin, and in terms of, other oral supplements that can help with your skin quality, that's huge.
I love that. What are some oral skincare supplements that you suggest for good skin health?
So I think vitamins, actually, whatever is topical that's good for you, I feel like kind of many of those things would translate into what's good for you in terms of oral
Internal.
supplements.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, vitamin C is a huge component of the collagen that we make. I'm a chemistry major, so I know that without vitamin C, you can't make collagen. So, that's kind of important, both orally and topically. Um, just in terms of, our, whatchamacallit. Yeah, I would say omega-3s, fatty acids are super important. Those things that come with a balanced diet, I think are really important as well.
Got it. I know people are yes, some people are fans. They are 100% 10 out of 10, put oil on your face, and other people are like, no, don't put oil on your face. It'll clog all your pores. It'll make you break out. Which side of the spectrum are you on? And if you're suggesting an oil, which one would you suggest?
Oil, well, I'm pretty sure Jennifer Lopez uses more than olive oil for
That's right. Her line has
starters.
olive oil.
Yeah. So when it comes to oil and skincare, the one thing that I've seen a lot more people do is double cleanse. And so you use an oil-based cleanser followed by a water-based cleanser. In terms of oils and what I recommend from our own actually upcoming skincare line,
Cool.
that's the only oil that I would incorporate that would be of good benefit. The but from all the other skincare products is generally serums or creams, right? And so serum, I would say something with vitamin C is always good. And then if your retinol is serum, that's totally okay too.
Got it. Got it. Good. Yeah, I need all the tips. Again, headed in my late 40s, gotta work through it. My mom's got good skin at 80, so I like to think that I've got her skin. So I'm praying.
Yeah. So actually, one of the so we all know retinol is good for your skin, and when it comes to different formulations, there are a million different formulations out there. The other ingredient that's coming into vogue now that acts similarly to retinol but may not be as harsh is called bakuchiol. And so it kind of works similarly. It helps accelerate your skin turnover so that the younger, brighter, more youthful skin from the bottom comes up. And actually, we have this,
Ooh,
and we call it this is our new private label coming out soon, actually. And
beautiful.
so we called it Baku Ret because it has bakuchiol and retinol. So they kind of work in synergy
Ooh.
in terms of bringing out your best skin. So the directions for that are to apply it only 2 to 3 nights a week and see how your skin does. If it's peeling too much, then you dial back. But if it's not peeling enough, then you can go, to
You know more.
more nights a week. Yeah,
I
exactly.
love that. And when will your line be available, Dr. Kim?
So we are putting in our first order soon. So it should be hitting our shelves in a couple weeks. I'm really, really excited about
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, congratulations on your skincare line, and looks like
it.
that's going to be a really, really great move. So complimentary to the work you do, obviously. And thank you for having a discussion with us today about beauty on both the inside and out, and also just what it takes. I really respect the work that you do, and love that people get to go to you and really tap into what they believe is going to make them feel more confident or feel better about themselves. And it takes a skillful hand. So congratulations to you on being a pro at what you do. Thanks for being on the
Oh,
show
thank
today.
you.
I do want to share with all of you, we're going to do some after interview with Dr. Kim on over at the YouTube channel. And we're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about some health stuff, and we're going to get into just some other fun, juicy topics. As you know, I like the holistic view of things, and that's embodying all of it: our mind, spirit, and our body. So with that, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show today. Join us back here next week for a new segment of the Mad Love Your Life show. And remember that you can always catch the show here every Wednesday at 4 Eastern. You can also head over to maryd.com to grab the link to our YouTube channel, which is the Mad Love Your Life show, where we will have an extended version of the show each week, and you can just enjoy more great content. So until next time, may abundance always walk beside you, may joy always go before you, and may love always guide you on your path.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.maryd.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.